Just a warning, 16 by 20 inch colored pencil pieces take forever to complete. Hi, I'm Lisa, the artist behind Lachri Fine Art. Today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on drawing this tiger in colored pencil. I've used Luminance and Polychromos colored pencils for this. My blending was done as usual with Mona Lisa odorless paint thinner. Now I have a story to go along with the reference photo that I used for this piece, which is going to benefit you guys quite a bit. If any of you are familiar with David Stribling over at Paint My Photo, he posts some amazing photos for us to paint from. I've actually used several of his in the past. Well, he actually also has a website where his family takes these amazing photos and makes them available for purchase. The photos on his website are $5 for a single download, or you can get 5 photos for $10, which is a really good price. That's actually what I did because I want to download all the photos on their website. They're just amazing shots. This is where the story gets really good for you guys. After I made my purchase and got my downloads for my images, I got an email from Rachel Stribling, who has a great offer for you guys. She is giving us, just for this channel, total exclusive to us, which is really fun, a 50% off coupon that is good until February 28th of 2015. Any photo packages that you want to buy over there that you download, you can paint yourself. They are royalty free, so you don't have to worry about copyrights. You get 50% off right now. You're gonna see me painting a lot of these photos. They're just well organized. The website's set up so nicely. I was just really impressed by it, and I was really excited too because the price, full price, is a great price anyway. So 50% off, that means we can get even more photos. So definitely head over there. I will have a link to that website in the video description. It's wildlifereferencephotos.com, and when you check out, you will enter coupon 50 to take advantage of our 50% discount. Now, at the time that I'm actually filming this intro, I'm not even finished with this piece. It has been a long process. I am going on to my 7th day straight of working on it. It's big, and so it just takes a long time, which means this video is going to be abnormally long. So let's go ahead and get into it. Before I started recording, I used a 4H pencil to very lightly draw in my tiger and the background. I applied about 5 layers of gray to my entire border, then I blended that out with paint thinner. I applied several more layers of gray and then blended that again. I repeated this until my gray was dark and solid. I then used a stencil to draw in my background with a very sharp black Polychromos pencil. For my background, I wanted it to be a bit out of focus, which would push my tiger forward. I used a low-tack black artist masking tape for the border to keep that edge clean. For the forest, I did it very much like I did the damask background. I applied about 5 layers of colored pencil, this time letting my edges overlap each other, and then I blended that out with paint thinner. I just kept adding layer on top of layer using paint thinner every 4 or 5 layers. The main thing here was not to have any sharp or well-defined lines. I wanted a hint of forest without too much detail. This forest took an entire day and a half to block in, and I would still need to come back later once the tiger was done to make any needed adjustments in my values and contrast. A huge mistake that people make is to rush over their background. Everyone is so excited to work on the focal point of their piece that they feel the background isn't important. In reality, your background should take just as much time per square inch as your main subject does. The background is just as important as the subject. If it's on your paper, it's important. My backgrounds usually take me more time to complete than my main subject because they so often take up more space. Yes, they don't need as much detail, but they do need as much thought in the planning, and in the case of colored pencil, they usually need as many layers as any other portion of the piece. We've all heard the phrase, a team is only as strong as its weakest player, and this is definitely true with art as well. If a part of your work is weak, even if it's just the background, it'll pull the entire piece down. So while I was anxious to start on the tiger, I have to make sure that every other part of this painting was just right, or it wouldn't matter how good the tiger came out. Is that I lay my lightest colors down first, then layer my darker greens, grays, and browns over that. Don't expect to put a single perfect color down in just the right place and have your finished piece look realistic. This is all about layering. Remember, when you do something like this, don't put too much detail into your backgrounds or it'll pull attention away from your subject. The farther something is from the viewer, the less detail or harsh, sharp lines you should add. You want a hint of what's in the distance. You want people to be able to tell what it is, but not every teeny tiny detail. That is often harder than putting in the detail because you need to consider how to render the scenes or objects in a way that the viewer can tell what it is. But you also don't want to pull attention away from the focal point, so you need to have a definite balance there. As I work with my background, I'm letting all of my colors softly overlap each other along those edges. If something has a harsh line, it's going to draw unwanted attention to that area. I achieve this look in part by blending with the paint thinner. Then once I have around 15 or so layers, I start burnishing. Until the stage where I am burnishing, each layer is being applied with a very light hand so that I don't damage my paper, which would prevent me from adding additional layers. One of the final things I do on my background is to use a white luminance pencil to create soft circles in the background and along portions of the waterfall. I'm also using various shades of green over some of the highlighted portions to tone down my highlights. At this point, when I backed away from my forest, I could see that the areas around the waterfall could use a bit more definition. So I've gone back through with various darker shades to create more contrast in the area. When working with greens and browns in an out of focus way like this, you have to watch that you don't just create a camouflage pattern, which is really easy to do. Make sure that while it's out of focus, that you can still tell that it's a forest. Adding additional contrast in shades of greens help to create more depth in this piece. For the water, I'm using the same reddish brown tones that I'm going to later use in the tiger. The water is done the same way as the forest, keeping the lines between the colors soft, but still paying attention to each shape so that later on it ends up looking like water. Just like everywhere else, I added my lightest colors first and then worked my darker shades around it. This also took about 15 to 20 layers to complete. Once the background was done, I removed my masking tape and used a piece of vellum to keep my edge straight. When filling in the border, I used a cream luminance pencil. Because no blending was needed in between colors here, I burnished all the way around. Once I started on my tiger, I first used my black polychromos to start blocking in the stripes in the areas that would be very dark. Here, I needed to make sure that each stroke of the pencil was going in the direction of the fur. Blocking in the black this way made it easier when I started adding in the orange tone so that I didn't lose the lines I initially spent so much time drawing out with the pencil before I started. Again, I had used a 4H pencil for my drawing so that I didn't end up with heavy pencil lines that I couldn't easily erase later on. I just want those lines dark enough that I can barely see them. It's a bit deceiving when I share my work in progress photo on social media because it looks like I'm starting with really dark lines, but in reality, I've just hyped up the contrast in Photoshop on those photos before I started so that you could see what I was doing. When you look at the drawing in person, you should barely be able to see my outlines. The black was all blocked in, I started with the ears. I worked on one ear at a time until it was nearly finished. I then moved on to the eye and worked my way around the face. Breaking a large piece like this up into smaller sections is important so that you don't get overwhelmed with all of the details. I have a set of 120 polychromos and then a set of 76 luminance pencils that I use. So that I can remember which colors I was using on which part of the subject, I keep those stored separately from the rest of my pencils. This way I don't accidentally use an orange on the body that was not the same orange that I used on the face later on. Another option is to keep a list of which colors you're using for each area to refer back to. This is time consuming, but if you're going to be spending weeks or months on a single project, it would be worth the effort. It's so easy to forget which shade of blue that you used on the sky or which shade of red on the tiger. Keeping a list would eliminate that problem. Orange color of the tiger, I used several shades of oranges, reddish browns, and tans. The exact colors that you choose is going to depend on the pencils that you're using. Test out your colors on a separate piece of paper before you start on the tiger. Another thing to note is that it isn't just one perfect shade. I'm asked all the time, what color did you use for the skin, or what color did you use for fill in the blank here? No matter what I'm working on, the answer is a lot of colors. Unless you want your work to be very flat, you're not going to use just one color for anything. This is a layering process. Practice layering different colors on your scratch paper before you work on your actual project. The white areas of the tiger, I apply a layer of white luminance before I start shading in other values on top of it. This keeps me from getting that area too dark. I'm then using various shades of gray, violet, and a touch of blue in the shadowed areas of the white parts of the fur. Very, very little straight white will be left in the end. It's better to go lighter than you think you're going to need to end up being though, and slowly darken up as you go, than to start too dark and not be able to lighten it up enough. As always with fur, pay close attention to the direction of the fur. Think in terms of clumps instead of individual hairs. If you try to draw each individual hair, your finished work is going to look stringy. Hair and fur is best rendered by working in clumps and sections of hair, then applying a few loose individual hairs sparingly. The direction of the fur and how it's shaped is going to determine the muscle and bone structure of the subject, so it's really, really important that you pay close attention to this in your reference photos. Whiskers of the tiger, I first drew those out with a white luminance pencil, with quite a bit of pressure, even before I started my background. This kept those areas from going too dark. In the end, I'll go back through and clean up the whiskers by lining the edges of whatever the color is behind them. So in this case, greens on the right-hand side and grays on the left. I will then go back again with the white luminance pencil to pull out any additional highlights that I need. Notice that my black stripes are not flat black. The core is black, but the edges fade into reddish brown, brown, or orange tones. For the paws, I started by adding white for the lightest areas with my Luminance pencils before adding the golds and orange tones. I then defined the toes with dark browns and blacks and then blend it all out with paint thinner before going back in with more detail. As I work, I will start adding a gray lavender color onto the shadows of the white along with a bit of magenta. I use these shades on several areas of the shaded white fur. The main order for things in creating fur is to first shade in my darkest colors so that I keep the direction of my fur and the clumps from my initial drawing. I then block in my light and dark areas. I blend that out with paint thinner. Then I repeat the process. After having the paper well saturated with color, I'll start refining my detail with the tiny hairs and all of the little spots. Close attention to the areas of shine on the coat because this too determines the underlying bone and muscular structure of your subject. Shine does not just happen in random places, so that's really important to keep an eye on. While everyone is always so worried about the right color, really your contrast between your lights and your darks is going to play the biggest role in your art looking realistic. If you mix the perfect color but don't shade it properly, your finished painting is going to look flat. You've got to pay attention to where your different shadows and highlights go. See, again, in the white portion of this fur, I'm using the gray lavender color with some magenta and gray. If this fur was left flat white, there would be no dimension in the end piece. Sometimes an area like this part with the back paw can be difficult to draw correctly. Its shapes are fairly abstract. In this case, I would suggest that you turn your work upside down and pay attention to the shapes as shapes instead of trying to see it as an actual paw. This will help your end drawing be much more accurate. When I started on the rock in the foreground, first I blocked in my dark areas with black. Then I applied a greenish yellow color for most of the rest of it. I kept it very light. After that, I layered my darker greens. To achieve a natural looking mossy rock, I used about 5 different shades of green, some yellow and 2 shades of reddish brown and some of the orange shades I used in the tiger. It takes a whole lot of colors to really render this and have it look realistic. I wanted more definite detail than I had in the background. This is where I used the Scotch Magic tape trick that I showed you guys on Saturday's vlog. If you missed that, I will put a link in the video description below. Once I pulled up areas of detail on the rock with the tape, I went back over the entire area with an olive green to push it back down. This brought the highlighted areas and the shadowed areas better together. While I wanted more definition here, it was also important not to pull too much attention away from the tiger by having too much detail in this area. I used more tones of yellow in addition to getting richer green tones in the foreground of the rocks than I had in the background. Using the warmer yellows and brighter greens was another way to help make the rocks appear closer to the viewer. When recreating the texture of the mossy rocks here, you'll notice that I hold the pencil to the side quite a bit. I do this to create variation in my pencil strokes. Having that variation will make the rocks look more realistic. You don't want something like this to be too uniformed. Like everywhere else, it's always best to start quite light and then go back and darken areas as needed. Here you can see that my rocks are in a natural shade of light green, but that will all get toned down later on when I apply an olive green over most everything. By layering this way, I create a lot more depth than if I'm trying to get just the perfect color and the perfect spot every time. Layering a single color over several tones like this also helps to bring those colors together so they feel different but still all a part of the same piece. I broke this rock into 2 main sections here because it's quite large and this helped me to not be overwhelmed by everything and lose my place in all the details. This was my 6th day in a row of working on this piece. It would have been so easy to rush over those rocks just to be done with it, given the tiger, which is my main subject, was already finished. But like I said before, every inch of your paper or canvas matters just as much as every other inch. You've got to take the time needed for every bit if you want the overall painting or drawing to be great. I already have a lot of plans for more wildlife with this type of damask background. I've definitely got some shopping to do over on wildlifereferencephotos.com. Thanks for watching, guys. If you are a supporter over on Patreon, make sure to head over there because the 3-hour version of this one, it was long, so I just made it a 3-hour version for you guys this time, is available for you guys now without the audio. If you're new to my channel, I have new video critiques every Tuesday where I'm critiquing your original paintings or drawings, my own speed paintings, drawings, and tutorials every Wednesday, social media tips for artists each Thursday, and artist vlogs every weekend. So if you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Google+, all those fun social media sites. Links are below in the video description to keep up with news, my newest work, and see real-time clips of whatever it is I'm currently working on. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Are you guys glad that the tiger's finished? Now we can go back to going on walks, huh? You haven't had a walk in a week. It's been very boring for you, huh?